Hello.
Hello.
I would like to start out with a disclaimer so I don't mislead anyone. I am not a medical professional, which was clear from Amy's introduction. But not only that, I have no medical training, no education in the healthcare industry, but I have managed to amass a lot of knowledge about both these fields. Not deep knowledge, broad and shallow. It comes from two different sources. I'll have to say that I'm what people call an experiential learner. So, which I think is a lot like being a method actor. I don't know a lot about method acting, but this is what I understand. Is, let's say you were hired to play a drunk, so you would just get inebriated for days on end so you could effectively play a drunk. Or let's say you decide, because of a role you're playing, you're going to just scream, smoke a lot of cigarettes, and scream for 3 days, and then you would play a character who apparently screams a lot and smokes cigarettes. So that's kind of, so method acting versus like acting. Anyway, I'm an experiential learner. So the source of my knowledge, the first source of my knowledge came from just a history of bloodletting, really. A lot of puncture wounds, lacerations, broken pelvis, fractured ribs, shattered clavicle, oh my gosh, dropping the large window fan on a toe, wearing through a lot of layers of skin trying to ride a unicycle. So there were a lot of visits to urgent care and some to the emergency room, and some it was just like, put a Band-Aid on that. So there was that. And then the other source of my knowledge was, for many years, for about 10 years, I worked for a marketing agency that specializes in healthcare and medical device clients. And from that experience, I learned, not very practical information, just sort of enough to be mildly irritating when I would accompany either my parents to the doctor, or when I would go in for something and I'd say, shouldn't we put a Tegaderm CHG on that? And as far as my dad and the catheter, shouldn't that be a drug-coated catheter because of the risk of UTIs? I'm also wondering about the drug-eluting stent. Anyway, and the thing is, because I wrote for this stuff, I totally believed the hype. I totally believed what I was writing. The doctors, perhaps less convinced. Anyway, so I tell you all this because of my experience with healthcare and medical device, and all of this knowledge that I amassed, it was still possible for me to get very lost in the healthcare system. So, little backstory here. In about 2012, the steroid injections that I've been getting in both my hip sockets just stopped working. Basically, I couldn't really walk anymore. I finally went and had a couple of MRIs, and the diagnosis was, and I worked really hard to try to memorize this, and all I can tell you is it was something about severe dysplasia with labral tearing, tendinopathy, and end-stage osteoarthritis. So basically bone on bone with some little outpouchings and some ripped stuff in there. And the clear treatment, the only clear treatment for this was total hip replacement. So not being intimidated by the healthcare system, that seemed fine. I would just, in fact, this one seemed like super easy. I go in, they put me under, they fix my hips, I wake up, and then a few months later I do it again, but for the other hip, which is pretty much what happened. So by the time that my second hip had been replaced, this is now April of 2013, I hadn't moved around for a number of months because it had gotten really hard to walk. shortly after my surgery, I got a call from a talent agent saying, because she knew that I was a mime, and asked if I would be available to perform mime at kind of a she health club out in one of the western suburbs. And I thought, I'm 57 years old, and this is not really an age-appropriate thing, but I was driven primarily by capitalist greed, because 3 hours and I was going to get $450. I know. And then the other part was like, why? Like A, I'm in my now latter 50s, and B, I haven't moved much. I want to know that I can still do this. So I said yes. And so this was like, I don't know, like about a month after my second hip replacement. Okay, so I go out to this health club, and the party was out by a large swimming pool. Outside there was like a band with a singer and a large buffet of food, and there was an open bar, and it was like the beautiful people, the really beautiful people. I think it was sort of a singles event, I don't really know, but I was not remotely interested in interacting with any of the people there. And let me just tell you that this is not a group that is interested in interacting with a mime. I don't really understand. It's a lot like the bar mitzvah crowd, which, by the way, they're like so not interested. It's usually the mom who hires the mime for the bar mitzvah, and for the kids, I just want to come up and go like, I am so sorry. You just do your thing. I'm just gonna be like over here, like pulling a rope, not paying any attention on maybe lift, I just like really, it's okay. So that's kind of how I dealt with a lot of the corporate cocktail parties, anything. I would just, like, if there was a band, that was awesome, because I would usually just stand over in the corner and just play the bass. And then I would get bored with that instrument. I'm incredibly unmusical, by the way, but dang, as a mime. And then I would play the violin for a while. And so this particular night at the party, I hadn't moved in a long time, so I decided it would be like, okay, after I was done playing with the band, I started dancing with myself. I mean, it was like this sort of like boom, boom, and then this and tangle stuff. And then I would just, I don't like to do illusions very much, so I would just get my head stuck in a wall for a while and work on that, or get stuck in one of the chaise lounge chairs, and then I would stand over by the buffet table and mime, like slopping large amounts of food on my plate. So I did that, but it was mostly torquing my body around a lot because, well, hell, I hadn't done that in a long time. So I went home and, felt not great, but the next day felt like really stiff and sore. And a couple days later, like even stiffer and sore. So I called a friend of mine because I knew she went to a chiropractor, and she recommended this particular clinic. So I made an appointment after work, and my back was, pretty locked up. So she suggested this one rather aggressive adjustment where the patient is lying on their back, you pull the knee up, and the chiropractor pushes on one shoulder and pushes the knee over. And my back, actually, I don't think it even cracked. But anyway, went home. This was like 6, 7 p.m. Went to bed that night, and at about 11 p.m., woke up as my body is just catapulting me out of the bed and onto the floor. And I couldn't stand up anymore. And I had to pee. So I crawled to the bathroom, but I couldn't move my body at a more than a right angle. And excruciating pain. And the first thought I had was that I'd snapped one of my new hips, that somehow something had broken. So the next day, just all crumpled over. And by the way, we had recently moved into a 3-story townhouse, which is so awkward. So my husband carted me off to the orthopedic surgeon. They x-rayed my hips. No, there was nothing broken. So then we went off to the urgent care. They did a CT scan, and by then we got me a wheelchair. He wheeled me off to work, and the whole thing, it was like I was sort of okay when I was crumpled over, but the minute I tried to stand up to even use the bathroom, just incredible pain just shooting down my body. So then the results of the CT scan were, yeah, you have spinal stenosis. So basically, live with it. So then this continued. A couple days later, I went to a primary care doctor, and I said, they said it's spinal stenosis. Is there nothing you can do? And she said, if you did a CT scan on like everybody over the age of 50, half of them would have this. It should not be this way. So you should go to a pain clinic. So I went off to a pain clinic, and they prescribed swimming pool therapy and a TENS unit. And so I did that twice a week. Now what had happened was, over a period of about a week, I had evolved away from the wheelchair so I could be normal during the day. And at 11 o'clock every night, this horrible radiating, they called it radicular pain, would start shooting down my left leg, just shooting. And my husband moved down to the basement because he couldn't sleep. And I would spend the next 5 hours just pacing around the house. And first of all, I binge watched Downton Abbey, which was great. I got caught up on that. And then afterwards, like all that was left, we didn't have Hulu or Amazon or Netflix or anything. I watched My 600-Pound Life. I watched Hoarders. I watched like whatever horrible TV was on between 11 p.m. and 4 in the morning. The other thing I would do is I would take these hot baths. So this is like, now it's June and it's hot out, but I would fill the tub up to the very top and just immerse myself in it just to feel something else. And then I would go back to bed, and then I would pace, and then I would have another hot bath. And I just say this because in November of that year, we got our water bill. And like, we looked at it like, what the? And then I had this sort of distant memory. It must be like women who've given birth, and it's sort of yeah, I remember that hurting a long time ago. So this continued on, and again, it was like Groundhog Day, only like not funny, when Bill Murray would wake up and the clock would click to 6 and then the news would come on. My Groundhog Day was every day I would just wake up in this horrible state because I'd fallen asleep at 4 in the morning, and I would get up at 5:30 and I'd try to make my way to work. And then at 11 p.m. that night, I would wake up with this horrible pain. This went on, and it was exactly as boring and tedious as it is right now. Like, I am so bored telling you this. And I was going to say, Andy, you should just this would be a time to get drink orders. Yeah. But I won't tell you. Just imagine this went on for about a month, and to the point where I had never actively felt like I wanted to end my life until that time. So at about 2 a.m. one particular night, I went down to the man cave and I woke up Bob and I said, we need to get me an MRI. Nobody had done an MRI. I'd seen 7 different specialists, or I have to end my life. I cannot do this one more day. So we went to the emergency room, and there was a long line of people with both flesh wounds, punctures, slightly more, there's more bloodletting. So they shot me up with morphine, and I lay on a gurney in the hallway. That was like 2:30 in the morning, and now it's like 7 in the morning, and the morphine's wearing off, and they shot me up again, and then finally did the MRI. When I came out, they said, yeah, you have a horribly herniated disc. Like, we don't even know how you've been functioning. We'll set you up for a surgical consult this afternoon. So this was a Thursday. I went in that afternoon and I met Dr. H the third. So Dr. H was, he didn't inspire confidence, let me just say. I mean, like, he wasn't like classic, like Minneapolis St. Paul magazine, I think it is, that always has like the best doctors, and they always look like they're straight out of a GQ magazine and kind of airbrushed. Not Dr. H. He had sweat trickling down his chin. His teeth were sort of gray and at an angle, and he was wearing a pair of dirty Adidas. But he said, "Oh, I can operate on you this Saturday." It's now Thursday. And I said, "Well, wouldn't you need to do a pre-op exam?" "Yeah, we'll do it that morning." And then he would whack me on the back and say, "You're the kind of patient we dream about. You're going to be bouncing back at work by next Wednesday." So I was like, okay. I mean, that sounded good to me. Bob picked me up, and I told him this, and he said, "Don't you think you should get a second opinion?" And I just said, "I'm out of time." So Saturday morning, very early, went in, and as I'm like going under, remember, crap, he forgot to do the pre-op exam. But anyway, I go in, and then next thing I know, I'm waking up in post-op, and I'm in a ton of pain, like a ton of pain. And there wasn't really anybody around. I kept doing the nurse call button and just anguishing. And finally, I called my friend Peg, and I said, I can't get anybody to come help me. I don't, and she said, "I'm coming down there right now." So if you ever need somebody to advocate for you in a crisis, my friend Peg's your gal. She came down and she went to the nurse's station. She actually came around inside the nurse's station and said, "You got a patient down in 404 who's in acute neurological distress, and you're gonna need to get her a PCA." Those are those little boxes that have like Dilaudid in them, and then the patient can pump it. And like, it's not actually patient-controlled anesthesia because it actually locks you out for 10 minutes. So to a degree, you can try, but to a degree, it'll lock you out. Anyway, so I said, "Ma'am, we're gonna need to ask you to," she's like, not leaving until you 10. So in fact, they did. They hooked me up with the machine, and I never did see Dr. H the third again. Ever. There wasn't a lot of care and attention. The pain continued. And then it was Monday, and it was time for me to be discharged. And there was sort of nobody around to discharge me. And I finally just asked like some tech, and they said, "Yeah, according to my clipboard, I guess you're discharged." So I finally flagged a nurse, and she brought in a bag and said, "Well, here are your meds." And I looked in this bag, and there was just like 4 or 5 vials of drugs in here. And I said, "Could you tell me how I'm supposed to take these?" "Well," so she was like, "Well, this is OxyContin, that's for pain. And this is oxycodone, and that's for pain. And here's gabapentin, and that's for pain. And then there's Tylenol with codeine, and that's for pain." Anyway, so I just gathered up all my drugs, and I went home, and I called the hospital, and I said, "Okay, this is a problem. I don't know what as a patient I'm supposed to do. Can I please make an appointment with my surgeon, Dr. H the third?" And she said, "Oh, I'm sorry. He no longer works here." "Where does he work?" "Oh, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but yeah, he was let go." "I think he works at the VA now. I don't know. Not really sure." "Yeah, I know," is what she said to me. Like, "I know. Isn't that weird?" "Yes." And so, the other thing is they sent me home with a 72-hour course of steroids, which nobody told me. You will not sleep. Not only will you experience pain, a lot of it, and you won't sleep. So now it's like midway through the course of steroids, and I called them up and I said, "I need to see a surgeon." So they said, "Well, we can set you up with one of our spinal surgeons this Friday." So I went in and met Mr. H, who was like 45 minutes late to the appointment, did not apologize, and then said, "Okay, well, let me check you out." And he's like, "Does this hurt? Does this hurt? Does this hurt?" And I said, "Well, okay, so doctor, I need to explain something to you. So I used to be a dancer." And he said, "Yeah, I'm sure it's a really exciting story. Can you save it for later?" And said, what I'm trying to say is I was a dancer and I experienced pain a little differently, perhaps. Anyway, he looked at my MRI, which happened before the surgery. He said, I don't know. The soonest I could operate on your back is next Wednesday. And I said, operate for what? He said, well, how the hell should I know until I get in there? Look, so anyway, so I left there, and now the pain had continued, and this was just more tedious, boring stuff that just went on and on. But now I was on this course of meds and had no idea. Like, I shouldn't have been driving. I mean, I was really, really under the influence. So this went on and on and on until finally I found my way to the good doctor. We'll call him the good doctor. And he set me up with, a really good physical therapy and a better course of meds. And finally, by the following summer, I was well enough to go on a little backpack trip with my two sisters. I only had to carry like 7 pounds, which was really great. That's like a purse, okay? So things got better. So things were fine. But after that, I thought, my God, I had all this experience with the medical system, and I had been writing about healthcare and medical device, and I still totally felt like at sea, like there was nothing I could control. And then I decided there were 2 things that I could control. This is not to impugn any chiropractors or the chiropractic industry, but I could choose to never have a chiropractic adjustment again, and I could choose to never do mime again, and I could control that, and that's what I've done.